Yo guys, it's Amél, and today we're going to be taking a deep dive into how a progressive house track is made. Yeah, so today we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into some production elements of a progressive house track. This genre has been around for a long time. I guess is considered kind of the golden era of some EDM tracks, and kind of took a dip away, and now it's actually coming back. And we have one of my remixes here that I've been working on for the past few months, so it's the perfect opportunity to dive into it, look at some details, look at some little sneaky production elements, and just see how a track like this is made. Yeah, this is quite a big project, as you can see.
How many tracks?
Right now we're at 155.
Wow.
And if you ask some people, they're going to argue and be like, oh, those aren't real tracks, they're automation clips. So yeah, depending on which DAW you're working in, I mean, you can see I have a bunch of audio clips, I have a lot of automation clips, I have a lot of MIDI patterns, whatever, reference tracks up here. But regardless, it's a big project. There's a lot of elements in here. But if we dive back to the beginning, I have the vocals muted, but this is a remix that I've been working on of Birds of a Feather, so that's the original track from Billie Eilish. But normally, this isn't specific to progressive house per se, but specific to, I guess, remixes. Just one thing I like to do with approaching remixes is keeping at least some elements of the original track.
Right.
Because to me, you can do a remix anyway. You can keep a lot of the elements, or you can keep no elements. Like some remixes is just the vocal and a completely different production. A lot of times that just feels very disconnected for me. So I like to at least keep some elements so it feels a bit like the original. And how I did that in this case is I started with this little arpeggio. It's a different sound than they use in the original track, but it still keeps the same feeling. It's the same arpeggio type of thing. Yeah, so it's the same exact pattern as I used in the original song. I've used, I forget if I used a Nexus. Yeah, I used this little patch from Nexus. It's called a sun pluck. Normally, it's if you open it up, it's very bright.
Very Avicii.
Yeah, Avicii,
right?
kind of Martin Garrix, almost.
Tim Bergling, known professionally as Avicii, is a Swedish DJ, remixer,
Okay.
and record
All right.
Thank you, Siri.
There we go. Phone is always listening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a very nice sound, but obviously that wasn't the sound I wanted, so I just essentially took the cutoff and turned it way down, so it's just kind of less in your face. Has some reverb and delay on it, and again, it's not the original sound they use in the track, but it plays the same pattern, and I just like the sound of it, how it fit into my remix. Coming up here, because the vocal is so good, you don't want to just add a bunch of elements and take away from the vocal. A lot of times for my breaks, I like to keep it pretty sparse, and also especially for progressive house, since there's so much energy in the drops.
Right.
It's nice to have that contrast. That's one of the things I love about EDM, is the contrast between having these very chill breaks and, because something like house music is just kind of chugging along the whole time.
Yeah.
I love having the contrast of energy, bring it down, have a more emotional moment, and then bring it back up. So here we have, I don't know if I put pianos or chords, we'll see. Yeah, just some saw chords.
By the way, if you struggle to finish songs, we've put together a free 90-minute lesson that fixes that. Link below.
This has become a bit of a bad habit, but I came from a world of doing a lot of remakes, and so when I approach a track, it's more usual for me to create a lot of my sounds from scratch instead of using presets. So you can see it's just an init preset. It's a really simple sound. Essentially all it is some saw chords I have like 8 voices, a little bit of detune, just cut off so it's taking off a lot of that high end. Again,
Filters everything, right?
just filters it out so
Yeah.
it lets the vocal shine on top.
Yeah.
And then one thing that makes it a little bit more interesting is I just have this basically sine wave. It's moving the phase back and forth, so it kind of has this wavy, it almost sounds analog, a little bit of imperfection, like some pitchiness.
Right.
It's a bit subtle, but it's there to add some movement. Then I have this, almost like a, I don't know, like an Afro housey type of thing.
Yeah, Afro housey, and I guess acting as like pedal tone or something, right? Just
Yeah,
staying
just
constant.
just giving
Yeah.
it some rhythm,
Yeah.
right? So if I play everything together, you have the arpeggio. So you have the chords creating the vibe, giving the actual chord progression, then the arpeggio, and then the kind of steady note that's also giving it some rhythm. Obviously you heard down here there's like some little drums and like impacts and stuff. Pretty simple stuff. And then I thought I was being all fancy. What I did is I because it's birds of a feather, I thought it'd be cool to add some elements that kind of reflects that. So I just have just a little atmosphere with some
Creative.
birds in it that just, you know, kind of ties into the title.
I love that Afro plug. It adds so much, right? It plays
Yeah.
a single note, but
If you take this away,
it's much more static, right?
you still have the rhythm from the art, but it's it's subtle. Like it's not a super bright sound, but
Yeah.
it just keeps things going. It's very atmospheric. Also a very simple sound. I think I probably just made this in silent as well. Or serum. But it's the same thing. Yeah,
Nice.
just like a little saws.
Yeah, and I feel what makes
Super
this
simple.
very rhythmic is the delay that's on it, right? Because that
Yes.
kind of adds this bounce to the tail. right?
Exactly, yeah. So this is just playing like quarter notes or whatever. And then here I have, the delay, an eighth note delay on one side, and then dotted eighth note, so it's just kind of like bouncing around. And if you're listening in headphones, you'll probably hear it bouncing
Yeah.
around on both sides of your head. So very simple sound, but it just adds a lot. Building from that, I don't know if I have more drums coming in here. I don't think so. But I have this re-space coming in to add some low end. Oh yeah, a shaker here. So yeah, and the second section, pretty much the same, has all the same elements, but now we're adding in this re-space. Again, very simple sounds. I probably just made this from scratch as well. Yeah, you can see in it. It's just a bunch of saws. Most of the sounds I use are going to be saws cut off. I think that's it.
Right.
Super simple.
Sounding very good. Like, what's on these mixer channels of the sounds we've heard so far? Is anything like crazy going on, or?
Knowing me, it's probably like EQ and maybe a little bit of Soundgoodizer. Let's
sound
see.
good either.
No, I'm very simple with my sounds. Like I don't do a lot to them usually. I just add up a lot of simple sounds that work well together. Yeah, literally stock EQ. Just cutting out some like upper mid frequencies, chopping out the very, very low end. I probably should have this a little bit higher to keep things cleaner, but you know, having a little bit of I like not keeping my mixes too clean. I feel like in dance music sometimes people get so focused on like everything needs to be so clean that
Right.
it starts to sound a little bit unorganic.
Yeah.
It like takes a little bit of the feeling out of it.
Yeah, a little bit of mod, I guess, adds character, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of
Yeah.
grid.
And you can also do things as well, like if I wanted to be super technical about my mix, probably what I would do is I would start out with just the chords, keeping some of that low end, and then once the respace comes in, then have like an EQ automation. So then now the respace is taking the low end, and then the chords cut out. Right. So if you want to be like super complex about your mix and like everything has space for each other and whatever, but normally I don't do that, and it works. So
whatever works, right?
Whatever works. Yeah, probably same thing for this respace. That's going to 13. Yeah, I don't even, these are on an automation clip. So somewhere I have automation clips that are turning these on and off.
Right.
Oh. Yeah, I don't even know. But essentially there's no effects. This is just like sidechain for later on, I guess, if this is playing in the drop or something. But yeah. And this is one thing that's nice too is, and I guess this goes back to, I think I learned this from a Martin Garrix Masterclass, but like even these volumes, a lot of like the mixing I'll do in my projects is I'll literally just, if I have, let's say in the drop, I might have like 6 or 7 bass layers. Instead of going and like changing volumes in the mixer rack, in effects, whatever, I'll literally just be like, okay, there's too much of this bass, turn it down here, turn this one up. So like a lot of my mixing is done in here. And even in the synth, like if I think this bass has too much low end, maybe I'll just come in here and like, unless it needs a very specific EQ, obviously you can't do much with this. It's just like chopping out low or high. It's pretty simple. But sometimes in the synth, I'll just shape the sound so I have to do less mixing in. And that's just all personal preference, right? It's just like a workflow thing. If you want to come in and come here and add an EQ, like it's easy enough to do. But my theory is that if you have good sounds, they can be simple sounds, but if they're good, then you don't really need to do a whole ton of processing.
Right.
Especially in a track like this. Like it's, if you're doing dubstep or something, then you're gonna have like everything's filled up.
Yeah. Yeah, but in general, right, yeah, like you said, sound selection, sample selection is crucial, right? Like the better your source, the samples, the less mixing and processing you have to do to make them sound good or better.
Yeah, exactly. And I think in a few minutes I'll be a bit countering myself, because typically in my drops I have like a million sounds playing at once.
Yeah.
You know, so like in the drops I'll have, instead of just picking the exact lead sound I want, I'll have like 10 layers that all add up.
Right.
But in the breaks here, you can get away with pretty simple sounds, and yeah, as long as everything fits together, you don't need very complex things. So I think moving on to the second section, I think this is the same. No. Yeah, so this is a slightly different one. This is a little synth pluck I made. I think it just opens up. Yeah. Also a really simple sound,
so
but it's
good.
it's so satisfying. It's very dreamy.
Yeah, the top melody on this is really nice, right? You're starting to introduce a little bit of a melody, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple things going on here. Again, I think this is just a little pluck. Actually, in the very first demo version I had done, this was a lot more prominent. Like it got to this section and you could hear a lot more, like this was much more in your face. Now in this version I have like pianos and this is kind of like building up in the background. But yeah, this version, this synth is just, I just made it in Serum. Again, more saws. You're gonna see that in every synth I make. More saws with just a little, this is just controlling the cutoff.
Right.
Like, it's super basic sounds.
Can you disable the filter modulation, like on the cutoff, just to see what it sounds like? How important, if you bypass it, you will get to hear what that's doing if you open the cutoff. So it's definitely shaping
Yeah.
the filter, right? If you enable it. Yeah. Because in terms of sound design, this is something I really didn't know until like I was making music for a couple of years. But like modulating your filter cutoff, besides using the general ADSR for volume shaping, right?
Yeah.
This is huge to get better sounds.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I mean, this is something I learned super early on in like sound design, or like making your own sounds. And it's a bit different in Serum because you can modulate like anything. You modulate anything with anything else. But even if we go in like Sylenth, like I can make a similar sound in like 5 seconds. I go like this, make a bunch of saw voices, make sure they're like stereo. Doesn't matter what you do with this, give it a little bit of release. Now we put a cutoff on it. Put it down an octave. Okay, now you have cutoff saws. But then, yeah, like you said, all you're doing is just putting a little envelope on the cutoff. And then, of course, you have like reverb and delay and stuff that makes it sound a little bit more interesting. Like, pretty similar sound. I mean, you
30 seconds?
Just,
Yeah.
Like, you can just do this and... You know, so like you can hear it's slightly different settings, but like sometimes you can have very simple sounds, but if it's done in the right way, it's like, I don't know, to me some of the simplest sounds are some of the most interesting sounds.
Right. Less is more.
Like so many songs use a cutoff saw and it's just so satisfying.
Yeah. So
that's all it is, and then some quick effects. Still sounds cool, but then this just makes it very spicy.
Yeah, I guess then another point I'm seeing here is like, I guess in terms of arrangement and dynamics, right? Because obviously you have to filter, but you're automating filters throughout the song, right? To kind of play with the sound and how much it opens and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that I think I've always done, and there was like a point in the beginning where I automated everything, and then I kind of, as the years went on, I stopped doing it as much. But one thing that I've been, I don't know, I mean, so I come from a background as like playing violin, playing some real instruments, guitar, whatever. And so I think one thing that gets overlooked a bit in electronic production is everything's so perfect. And so I think sometimes as producers we'll forget to, like, you almost want to treat your production as if you're like coming from a background as a violinist. I'm like, okay, if it was an orchestra, how would they do it? Right, because it's like, if I'm just making dance music, I'm like, okay, you have a kick, and then the kick stays in the same, in the drop, in the break, and whatever. It's like, no, like if a real drummer were playing that, he's like going crazy in the chorus, and then it goes down, and like maybe he plays the kick a little bit softer.
Yeah.
Or maybe he like... So you just have to think about everything can be modulated, and if this were a real orchestra playing, like the violins would get louder, and they'd play things more like aggressively. And so that's all you're doing with like a cutoff automation, is like you start chill, and then you're like crescendoing, and you're like building up the tension.
I love that.
So you can see here I have, is this, I don't know if these are all for this one, but I think it is. So I have like I think this automation's for that. Yeah, so I have two automations for this synth. So this top automation here is opening up the cutoff. Starts a bit more chill. Opens up a bit. And then this automation below it is a separate automation that I actually have on the effects rack, which is... So this is like an external plugin. Again, literally just one EQ chopping out like not even very much of the low end. But it's just a filter. So this is just cutting off all the highs.
Yep.
So in this section, starts out like very damped down. And the reason I did that is because I wanted to have like these pianos come in, for instance. So I wanted to let that shine through. We have with those.
More saws.
More saws. It's probably in silent. Yeah. Pretty much almost the exact sound we just made, but without the cutoff filter. So it's just the saws. But then this way, so like I start out with these saws, and then I have the plucky saws filtered down. And so that gives room, like everything feels very kind of a wash. And then as it gets to the next 8 bars, then that filter opens, and then you really start feeling the rhythm of the pluck.
Right.
You know, so similar sounds, but then the rhythm gets introduced. So like if I just play all this section together, all the strings, like, and now you can feel the rhythm start to come.
So speaking of organic instruments, you showed the piano, but I'm also hearing and seeing strings in the first bit and then some guitars coming in later.
Yeah.
How do you program those to sound so good?
I feel like, well, this was something that it took me forever. Like I would always see people making guitars or strings, or like there were all these. I feel like it's very easy to make synth sounds on computers, and it's a lot harder to make an instrument on a computer that sounds like a real instrument without it just sounding very cheesy and fake. So it took me, especially me coming from a background in violin, like I know what that's supposed to sound like, and if it sounds electronic and like fake, then I hear that right away. So there's a couple things. One is finding the right plugins, and that's like 90% of it. But then even once you find the right plugins, then there's still ways of like manipulating the plugins to kind of humanize it more.
Right.
And for me, I would say a big advantage because I know how to play the violin, I know how to play the guitar, like I know what that's supposed to sound like. And so if you can kind of, even if you don't know how to play it, if you can just kind of put your mindset of like, what would a real guitarist do?
Right.
How would they play that? What would a real violinist? If you kind of can understand it from that perspective, then you can make things sound a lot more real, even if it's fake. So like I'm not a pianist, for instance, but I use pianos all the time. This is a really great plugin. It's called Labs. I don't know why I have 2. I think that one's muted. But I actually learned about this plugin from Mesto a long time ago.
It's free, right, Labs?
Yes, it's free. They have like paid if you go to more packs. I honestly hate their new interface, but whatever. But yeah, this one is the soft piano. I do have some effects on this one because this one out of the gate is like really mellow, like very cut off.
Yeah.
So I like to put some OTT on this one because this kind of brings out like you can really hear like all the little white noise and like human imperfections of playing it.
Especially on the attack, right? There's this little like
just like these little, you really hear like the fine details of all the keys hitting and the pedals, and so that's a really nice plugin. We have these saws just to like make a bed of sound.
Mm-hmm.
These strings, if you want to play like a solo violin, there's definitely better plugins, but if I'm just making a bed of strings, honestly I just use Nexus.
Okay.
One of the things that makes this sound a lot better is having a little bit of release.
Yeah.
It doesn't make that much of a difference, but it just helps the sound kind of overlap, sound a bit smoother.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember from certain string plugins or libraries that when there's no release or minimum release, then it just sounds very artificial, right? And it doesn't flow. There's no...
Getting the actual sound of a violin, they can do pretty well, sampling, but the attack and release and one note flowing into the next, that's the part that not a lot of plugins, like it's pretty easy to tell. It's like, yeah, that's a fake violin.
Right.
So, speaking of like doing what a real instrumentalists would do. You can see I have automations of volume. So just imagining yourself as an orchestra. It's like, what would an orchestra do? You're building the tension, all the violins start playing louder. So almost all the strings I do has an automation. It's like the most simple thing you could do, but it makes a big difference. So this comes in, gets louder. It's more or less the equivalent of like what we did just above with opening the synth cutoff.
Right.
The
dynamics, right?
Yeah, dynamics. Yeah. So you can do that with filters. You can do that with volume. With strings, I always do that with volume. And then, oh yeah, the other element is this guitar. I think I have a little reverse into it. This, took me so long to find this plugin. I always wanted a plugin that sounded like a nice guitar. I forget, there's a couple free ones that I use that just never sounded good. This sounds, it's like sometimes it's a little too perfect, but if you use it as an element, like if it's not the main element, then it sounds really good. This is Contact. I think it's like, I don't know, $100 or something. And yeah, it just sounds really good. It's like you can either do it mono or stereo or like a double take, whatever. So there's a lot of options. And I would say the only thing with a plugin like this is if you don't play a real guitar, you can like make some guesses at how to do it. If you do know what a real guitar sounds like, then you can be very specific about like what strumming patterns you want and stuff.
Right. And
that helps make it sound a lot better.
Yeah.
Like one thing I did, for instance, on this, if I were playing it in real life, I'd go like jun 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 jun, like play a very specific pattern.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have that pattern in the program. So like if I turn this off, this is the real pattern. It's kind of like halftime of what I actually wanted. I wanted like jun 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 jun. But you can fake that with a delay. So I just like turn down the feedback super low, turn on the delay, and now you get
genius.
So now it sounds like you're doing the extra strum, like jun chicka jun jun. In real life, you'd be doing that.
It's adding that 16th note while not doing it in a super like fake way or something.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a background element like this.
Yeah. Like if you hear it alone, it sounds like a little bit weird, but if you play it with all the other instruments, it's like a rhythm thing.
Yeah.
And you all it's there is to give that like rhythm and like keep the energy going. Plus it like pairs up kind of with the rhythm of the tambourines, and it just like blends in and you'd never know.
Right.
Yeah. So those are my tips with like acoustic instruments. Is you can they're like, if you know what you're doing, you can fake your way into making them sound pretty good.
Right.
Even if they're not actually real. Down here, we just have some more impacts, like little effects and stuff. I won't get into too much stuff until the drop, but yeah, we'll get into more effects and stuff because that's more important in the drop. But even in the break, there's just like, I like using a lot of transitions and stuff. Here's like some samples I've made inspired by Avicii, for instance. Stuff like that, little tambourines. I'm just a big fan of making things flow. So I like things that like kind of sweep and then and even like halfway through, like I have this little sweepy cymbal thing. Like very gentle, very pretty quiet in the background, but just stuff like little ear candy. Even like this, a little upsweep. And then you can layer that, like this is a sample I made a long time ago with like a little bit of panning.
Very cool.
Yeah, so it's, I mean, if you've seen any tutorials, like when I used to watch Brooks Masterclass and stuff, he always talks about like layering synths. You can do the same technique with samples.
Right.
Right, so that's another thing, is like maybe you have the perfect sample, sounds really good, you only have to use that. Maybe you have something that is kind of close, but then you want it to be a little different, and like you have the option of searching for 5 hours to find like the perfect sample.
Yeah.
Or you have the option of just adding another sample.
Right.
Which is why my project looks like this.
A
You
lot
can see
of
I have
samples.
like, especially in the drop here, I have some effects and stuff,
Right.
and then here I have more effects. So it can get a bit overkill, but yeah, layering never hurts. Except for, I would not recommend that on like main elements like a kick or something.
Right.
Unless you really know what you're doing. But
Yeah.
that can get a little weird.
Yeah, layering can get tricky on kicks or anything with a lot of low end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come to find, especially when I was just starting out, when I heard the term layering, I was obsessed with layering, and I
Yeah.
started, layering kicks and basses, but
Yeah.
I soon regretted those decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was one point, I think I used to do like 2 sub basses. I saw some YouTube tutorials that said put 2 sub basses because then it's more powerful.
They didn't tell you to pen one left, pen one right.
Yeah, exactly. Detune them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's some bad information out there, but yeah, as far as like this type of stuff, if I hear something that needs a little bit of extra effects, then just add it. So that brings us to, this is more or less just the drop. It's just like a breakdown, so it has like all the elements of the drop just without the drums and stuff. Which might be good to look at it separately, because then we can focus on the instruments before we go into the drop.
Yeah.
Typically, I rearranged this. I was kind of working with Afrojack on some of these things, and he likes his projects in a very specific way. So this is kind of like flipped from what I normally do. I arrange my projects in a certain way, and he does it in his way. Normally I have like my leads, and then my chords, then my basses, like everything arranged in frequency, high to low.
Right.
So this project is a bit different than I normally do. But anyway, my leads are down here. I can just solo these for a sec. Those are the main like synth leads, and then also I have this, which is just white noise.
Just for more effect.
Yeah, like if you listen. Right, so it gives you a lot of control. I think like if you listen to Martin Garrix and Dub Vision tracks, for instance, like a lot of the Dub Vision productions, they'll actually I don't know if they use white noise, or it almost sounds like they use a ride, like they'll layer rides with it.
Right.
So they'll just like grab a ride and like layer that as a rhythm with their leads.
Mm-hmm.
Burks used to do that in his tracks with like little percussions. And it just gives you more control, because like you can see here, it's just cashmere white noise is like the most basic thing. You can also do this in a synth, like in Silent One. You can just make a synth, go to an init preset, and just turn it on the noise oscillator.
Yep.
Instead of like a saw, for example. But with this, I like it because you have a lot of control. Like, it's already bounced out to audio, and then if I want more attack, I just go like that. Now it's very attacky. If I want more sustain, then I keep it more sustained. So you have like kind of an extra layer that you can really control over if you need more high end, or if you need more attack, or and also I feel like this is information at least I heard pretty early on in learning production, but like having white noise, since it's so bright in the frequency spectrum, whatever instrument you layer the white noise with,
Mm-hmm.
rhythmically, it kind of makes that element stand out.
Right.
So we have the leads are already a little bit bright, but then we have the white noise on top of it, and then it just like your ear kind of gravitates towards the lead.
Yeah.
So for the leads, let's take a look. I think I have a bunch of them probably layered up. Yes. Doesn't look like there's a ton, but if I play this, you're going to see this is a layer, and I think I have like 12 different leads. So I'll just go through some of these. Mostly what I've been doing lately, like I talked about before, I like making a lot of my sounds from scratch because I've done enough sound design at this point. At least for like, I feel like progressive style sounds are fairly simple, more or less. It's a lot of saws and stuff. So it's kind of easy to make sounds for it. But I will use Silent a lot for like if I just want big super saws. And then another thing I've been doing recently is using a lot of Nexus.
Okay.
Because Nexus has some of the sounds are a bit too over processed, right? So it's like it just on their own, like it can sound a bit intense, but they also have a very specific character. Like there's some sounds in Nexus, just the way they're programmed and the reverb and all these effects that they have on them, that it's a bit hard to get that exact sound in something like Silent or Serum or so to like I'll use Nexus sounds to give it like the main character and kind of a unique sound that it would be harder to get with another like Silent or something like that. And then to make it sound a bit more organic, to make it sound a bit bigger, a little more washed out or something, then I'll make my own sounds in Silent and Serum to kind of glue it all together.
Yeah.
So like this one, for instance, is probably one of my main sounds. Right? It's like pretty processed.
Yeah.
Has a lot of delay. This is also another thing specifically for the type of progressive house I like to make. And I think a little bit of this comes from also playing violin or playing real instruments, is like with synths, let's say you go to an init preset, the sustain is going to be all the way up. So for the entire length of the note, you're going to have the same volume.
Yeah.
What I like to do with progressive house is, like we have these notes here. You can see like the notes are a certain length and then there's a gap in between them. If we had it sustained all the way, it would be like note and then no note. It'd be like sound, no sound.
Right.
And so the way I like to do my sounds is, you can see I'll turn the sustain down quite a lot. I'll even turn the decay down so it's a bit more plucky.
Yep.
And then in this case it already has so much like reverb, whatever, I don't really need it, but I like having some release. I'll just show you a quick little example here. Yeah, so like if we just take an init preset, or not even, this is
Right.
There we go.
That's the init, right?
Yeah. So it sounds like super digital. You can do this, I think in Martin Garrix, a lot of his productions have a bit more sustain on it. But what I've found recently, how I kind of like to make my leads, is I'll make them a bit more plucky. Because then you just get like in between the notes, even though the notes are shorter, then the release happens. And so you get this, it's a lot more like, it like flows together better.
Right.
You get this.
Yeah, like those strings we had discussed before, right? Like the release kind of creates the flow between the notes, I guess. We were looking at chords before, but even with like a lead, you get this like, first you get the like natural fade out, I guess, right? Within the note while it's played, and then once it stops playing, there's still that little bit of release that helps it transition into the next note, right?
Of course, because you could still have the decay turned down, but if you have no release,
yeah,
you're just like, what?
Yeah.
It sounds so artificial.
Yeah.
So you can play around with the release. Of course, you get some of that once you add a reverb on as well. And then you can like already you can start hearing like that kind of big flowy sound. And then what I'll do later on is have those plucky leads so it has the attack. And then if I need to make it sound more glued together, like the notes sustained out, then as even with all like 10 leads, 12 leads, however many I have. Then I'll go on the mixer track, and like with Soundgoodizer, for instance, Soundgoodizer is essentially just a compressor. Then you can compress all the sounds together. Now you have this very attacky sound. Now you're compressing it, and so it makes it more sustained.
Right.
So you end up getting the sustain, and it makes it sound like this big sound, but you're kind of, instead of starting with the sustain, you start with something more plucky, and then it gives you a lot of control over how much sustain you want later.
Yeah.
And then you have the release in between the notes. So it's like this big... Yeah, I don't know. I just know when I started producing, like, again, when you open up a synth, it's usually very, like, it's either the sound's on or off.
Yeah.
And sometimes you forget to add, like, little ADSR settings.
Yeah. It's a great tip, though.
It just makes it sound a lot more natural. Like, it makes it feel like much more like a real instrument, having some decay release. You can see on this one I have a lot of release. Also a lot of delay, so it's like bouncing around.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. These are Nexus sounds. They do sound different than the typical saws you'd, for example, see in Silent Serum, right? This is like, sounds, it's a little more character, a little more...
It's a bit more of a unique sound.
So these are playing higher octaves than the other ones?
Yeah, like these first two are playing the low octave.
Yeah.
And then even this sound right here, this is a low octave. And this is the exact same preset, just an octave higher. So that's another thing with progressive house. Sometimes you don't initially hear it with your ear, but usually the leads are playing at least 2, if not 3 octaves.
Right.
And depending on, a lot of it just depends on your melody and then the key of the song, which octave you need to be playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in, I forget it, maybe it's in like Gravity or something, one of Martin Garrix's recent songs. I was listening to it and like referencing it, and I was like, why does the lead sound so full? And I kept like trying to tweak my leads, and then eventually I realized there's actually another octave that's lower, like a whole octave lower than I thought it should be.
Right.
And it's there, but it just adds it, like, then you can turn the volume of your chords down, for instance.
Yeah.
But it still sounds very full, because then you're getting that mid-range of frequencies covered.
Right. I remember when I was first making progressive house years ago, I started adding that, like, I guess, third octave, like the -1, right? The one, like, 1 octave below where your lead is sitting.
Yeah.
And when you play it in solo, it kind of sounds a little weird, because it feels like you're not supposed to play the lead that low.
Yeah.
But in context of the mix, and like you say, the chords, it really adds body, right?
Yeah, so and not always. Like, I mean, there's some tracks that if you do that too, or like some big tracks, that's like the lead is just very clean,
right,
and very crystal clear, and then it's supported by the other elements, and then in that case you don't. So it's a bit of a style thing, but that's something to be aware of that not all genres do. Yeah, something like that. I mean, this isn't too complicated. I could probably make it in silence. It's just like a little bit of bit crushing on the, to like add that character. But Nexus already has this, right? So it just has sounds that you're like, oh, that sounds cool. Like your ear's already drawn to it. So I just like using that to kind of shape the character of the lead. And then once I have the character, then I'll fill it in with the other synths. Piano, just to add like more organic, kind of like an Avicii synth. Yeah, a couple of these are actually presets that I bounced out from our time. Some different sounds that, it's like once you have sounds that sound good in one project, then it's nice to, like, that's how people always talk about like signature sounds. So if you have a sound from one track that is like, ooh, that's cool, then sometimes it's nice to bring a few of those into another project.
Right.
Yeah. So those are all the Nexus ones, and then now we get into the silent ones. You can see I just built these all from scratch. On their own, they sound pretty bad because they don't have all the effects like the Nexus does. But if we enable the effects, right, so we have some of this compression from, so that's adding more sustain, and then we have reverb and delay.
Yeah, can we hear this without reverb and delay, just to see what they're adding?
Yeah. And you can hear, even like with the compression here, it's still pretty plucky, right? So it's like ba ba, but it almost sounds like a strings playing staccato or something.
Right. Can we hear it without the sound goodizer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, also has a bit of body, right?
Yeah, it's just adding. I mean, in this case, like sometimes I'll actually add just a compressor, and like if I want to make it more sustained, you can also see I have like a transient processor on here. So in this case, I'm actually boosting the transient, so it's a bit more punchy. But for instance, if it's too punchy, if you want it more sustained, you could turn down the attack.
Right.
But yeah, generally I like to start with a bit more attack and then kind of shape the sound more in processing.
Right.
But of course, yes, reverb and delay on progressive leads makes a huge difference. So there's that one. I made this one. Honestly, pretty similar, a bit less detuned.
Quite detuned.
Quite detuned. Yeah, these ones, again, talking about mixing, you can see over here I have this one panned left and this one panned right.
Oh yeah.
Right, so a lot of my mixing ends up just happening over here. This one's turned up, this one's turned down. I adjust my volumes over here. And then instead of using like 10 mixer tracks here, they just end up all on 1 or 2. Because some of the mixing and panning and whatever is already done.
Right.
Yeah, so like this is one thing that I did is I have 2 different sounds, and one is panned left, one is panned right. So then you're like in the full context of the mix, you probably don't notice much, but technically then it's making your right ear and left ear have a little bit different sounds.
Right.
So it keeps the sound like 2% more interesting.
Yeah. It's all about adding those, like a little percent here, a little bit there, right?
Yeah. This was
The in it.
in it. Yeah, I just at the end, one thing that I'll hear in a lot of demos, if people send me demos, because I think when you sort of think about wanting to make a track sound huge,
Mm-hmm.
you just think about how can I make something sound super wide.
Right.
So you always make your synths with as many voices as you can.
Yeah.
But what people kind of overlook is to make something sound super wide, you want it to sound like very stereo, but you also lose some of the power if you don't have a mono voice.
Right.
So even if the overall perceived sound is wide, I always make sure to have at least one synth that's just mono. And usually, I mean, even some of these Nexus ones are already kind of mono. But at the very end, it's just an init, has a little bit of ADSR settings, but it's like super simple, and on its own, it sounds pretty bad. Sounds like a future rave kind of thing almost.
Yeah.
But if you add it in the context of everything else, it just makes sure there's that one that's like hitting you right in the center. It's like right in your face. Like, unless you're wearing headphones, maybe it's even hard to tell, but
Right.
it just makes sure that you're not losing the power of everything being too stereo.
Mm-hmm. Can we hear the lead without the Nexus layers, just to see what they're adding? Or maybe first play it with all the layers and then without the Nexus layers?
Yeah, so here's all the layers together. And here is without the Nexus layers. So you can hear like kind of how I build my sounds. You can hear the main body of the sound is still there with just my synths, but it's losing that character.
Yeah.
Like it's the fullness is there.
Yeah.
But the character of the sound that makes it sound a bit less of just a supersaw.
Yeah, I would say without the Nexus sounds, it sounds very clean and kind of basic progressive.
But it's like less interesting.
And then the Nexus ones add that little bit of spark and character and make
Exactly.
Far more interesting.
Exactly.
Love it.
And then, of course, without the processing, then you're losing some of the reverb and stuff. But yeah, it's mostly finding cool sounds, and then I support it with the Silent and Serum, and then for processing, it's mostly just adding a little bit of reverb. I'm chopping out some of the lows. Yeah, honestly, I would say if you want to see like very specific processing, I have a bunch of like remakes on YouTube, and you can just like download it, and otherwise it would take, you know, an hour to go through all of them. But
Right.
it's very easy to just download that and like dissect it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the lead. How did you come up with the melody?
I don't know if I want to say this. Well, I actually, one of the things that Nick Afrojack tells us to do a lot is like reference other songs.
Okay.
So maybe like take the rhythm of another song but change the melody, or take the melody of a song but change the rhythm, or take the chord progression. Like, so you can take little elements as inspiration. You can't obviously copy. But so I had, well, the whole original idea for doing this remix had come from Afrojack.
Okay.
He gave me 2 records to try to make a remix of, and this was one of them. He said, yeah, try to do a remix of Birds of a Feather, Billie Eilish.
Great song.
And so I was on my way back from, I forget which trip, maybe from France or something earlier this year, and I was sitting in the airport, and that's sort of where I came up with like this part. Like, I came up with the initial chord progression that went under her voice, and I had the little arp, and like that was it. And that sort of sat around for, I don't know, a couple weeks. And I loved that part. It sounded, the chord progression sounded really good with her vocal, but I had no idea what I was going to do for the drop. And then Afrojack texted me kind of soon after that, and he's like, hey, how's the remix going? And I was just like, shit, like I haven't done any work on it. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And so I texted him back. I was like, it's good. Like, I'll send you a version later today. I didn't have any drop, anything. And so I was trying to figure out, like, where do I take this? Obviously, I knew I was going to do a big progressive sound, but didn't know, like, what melody, whatever. And so I started looking through some kind of older songs and older Avicii things and stuff for inspiration. And I've seen a couple people say this in the comments, so they're right. But this is the reference that I took.
I knew it. When I heard the melody, yeah,
Right?
it has that super sweet sound to it, and that's what reminded me of, well, your melody, I guess, because when I heard it, I wasn't per se thinking like the melody sounds like this, but rather the sound and the sweetness like of it.
Well, yeah, it's funny you heard that, because originally, so I kind of took that melody, I changed the notes around, but I kept it pretty close to that cadence, and then I was just like, no, this is just such a rip-off, like it just doesn't sound right. But eventually I was able to like change some of the notes around, because like his is dun 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 dun, and so I added like a couple notes in there, like dun 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 dun. So it's like kind of takes the framework of the rhythm, but adds a couple things in. And then I had also, like, sound design wise, even the original demo was kind of in this style. Like, I like that kind of sweet sound.
Yeah.
But also this is like just an older sound.
Yeah.
And so at some point then Nick told me to, he's like, kind of put this in a more modern sound.
Right.
More modern mixing, more modern sound design, whatever.
Yeah.
So this, in fact, I've actually been using our latest record just recently as like a mixing reference for this. So you know, it's like similar style, cadence, whatever. So now it's like it's gone like full big progressive sound.
Right.
But yeah, that was the original melody. So shout out to everyone who guessed that. Yay.
Very good.
Yeah, and it was funny because even the first few times, like I had done this version of the melody or something similar to this, and I sent it off to Afrojack because I was like, okay, here's the version I did. I wasn't expecting this version to go far. Like at this point, it was still in my head. It was a bit too close to the Avicii thing,
Right.
and I wasn't even sure if I liked it because it's so repetitive. It's like dun 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 dun, like it just kind of repeats the same thing over and over, even though the chords change under it. But then Martin Garrix started playing it in his sets. I was like, it kind of bugged me a little bit, honestly, because I was like, damn, like I wasn't ready. Like I wasn't happy with that version.
Yeah.
I was like, shit. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, Afrojack liked it enough to play it in his sets. Martin Garrix liked it enough to play it in his sets. And then I started seeing the reaction from people, and like people in the crowd loved it.
Right.
I started getting messages about it, and so I kind of had to like take a step back. I'm like, okay, even if this isn't the version I love the most, sometimes you make something that you don't think is good enough, but if the reaction is good enough, then you just gotta be like, okay,
Go with the flow.
this is the one.
Yeah.
This is the one. And I've come to like it more. It's still not, I think other people still like it more than I do, but it works.
It's funny how you mentioned repetition, right? Because indeed the melody is like essentially, it's like repeating itself in a way, and then there's a little variation at the end, right? But then there's of course the role of the chords to make it interesting, right? To make it not feel repetitive, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of, if you listen to the record and you're not really paying attention, then you're like, oh, you wouldn't even notice that it's repeating. Obviously, repetition is super important in music, right? To make sure people remember your melody.
Yeah.
But the role of the chords is crucial. So maybe you can walk us through the chords and the sounds used there.
Yes, I actually that's a very important part because the melody is so repetitive. Like if the chord progression stayed the same, it would be super boring. I think these chords are actually a little bit different. I tweaked them a few times since the original demo that I made, but this is what they sound like. Let me go to, actually I have two layers of chords. I have like pianos and then more saws. Let me... Yeah, so one of the things I've been doing lately, not in every song, but in this one it worked, is kind of talking about that old Avicii reference and then also morphing that into a newer sound. This ended up being more of a like full-on progressive sound, but I like having some of those more organic elements. Even though they kind of get buried in the full context of the mix, it just makes it sound more natural. Again, like we were talking about using the ADSR and release and stuff on the lead synths, how it kind of gives it a more organic sound. You can hear in this one, it's also a lot of the same. So like I used a lot of pianos, for instance, and sounds that are a bit more attacky and then have a lot of delay and stuff, and so they just sounds a bit more organic. So this one, stock piano.
FL keys.
I have Nexus.
Classic
It's
dance
like
piano.
Avicii piano.
Yeah.
I didn't want to make it too much of that, so that's just one of the layers, but that helps give it that very bright sound. This is, I think, the same one, but maybe used in a different part. This is kind of more pianos, but also a bit like brighter.
Oh wait,
Avicii synths.
that was one sound?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounds like. An Avicii synth piano layer or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very bright. It has that kind of sound to it. Again, a lot of these sounds that are very attacky and kind of not as much sustained.
Yeah, and again, different octave, right? Playing one octave higher, I think.
Yep. Yeah, so like... Yeah, this one just like, it has a little bit of that vibrato, and it's a lot of playing around. I mean, you know, because I can go in here and just adjust, and this also sounds cool, but I was just like, yeah, it needs a little bit more high. It sounds a bit more angelic.
Yeah.
So a lot of that's just playing around, and you know, I could have easily gone the other decision and kept it an octave lower. And then to fill out more frequencies, I have some more like super saws, more typical sounds like this in silent. But you can also hear again, it's like I have a lot of release and a lot of like, so it's, yeah, a lot of release in the sound.
Right.
If I did like this, for instance, more typical. Yeah, it just sounds weird.
Yeah.
So having kind of more this shape makes it feel a lot more organic. You just mess around with that. And I have more punchy ones. And I think that's it. I think it's just up until here. It's better.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can hear it's powerful, and then I believe these are more. I don't know why I have a separate layer, but then these are just, yeah, more chords, just because I wanted to add more. Sometimes less is more, sometimes more is more. But yeah, I just, at some point, like, once I started changing the overall mix, once I was like more of a full-on progressive house song,
right,
then like this was kind of the layers that I added in to make it feel a bit more like that. On here you can see I have a bit more processing for like each individual one. Some of these pianos and stuff are a bit picky, like there's some weird low frequencies in some of these, so like actually I'm not doing as much processing as I thought I would have, but yeah, just like taking out some specific frequencies. And then yeah, like for the saw chords, for instance, I have pretty much most of the silent chords going all to one bus, mostly just like chopping out a few frequencies,
right,
a little bit of reverb. Mostly my processing isn't like that crazy. I think this one is like automated. I have some reverb on automation, I don't know, at a certain point during the song, but I don't even know where that is. There's too many automation clips. And then what's this one? Yeah, so like this,
more dense piano.
I don't know why this is here, because I have my leads down here, but yeah, normally I keep all my, like if I have leads, there's all going to be down here, but for some reason I have a second pattern up there.
Right.
Who knows why.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the chords. Basses, I generally keep pretty simple. It's pretty much just the chords, obviously without all the notes, but it's just like the bass, the root note of the chords, playing the same exact rhythm. And yeah, I have maybe 5 or 6 layers here. Sub bass. These are all, some of them I made in like Serum Silent. Some of them are like presets. I have some saved ones that I have from like different progressive sample packs and stuff.
Right. Seems to be some filler on top. Is that to make sure it's not clashing with the like chords and leads? Or?
Yeah, I was just hearing that as well. I don't know if I have, maybe it's this, or maybe it's just the actual processing. Let me check real quick. Yeah, so in this case, you can see this isn't even automated. This is just how I just chopped out all the high end. It depends. I would say normally I leave a bit more high end in my basses, but in this case, like there's already so much high end from the synths
Right.
There's already so much high end from the leads, like all the effects and stuff has white noise. There's the cymbals, whatever. So you still want that grittiness of the bass. Obviously, the sub bass is taking care of like the low end. So that's just like way down here.
Right.
But yeah, in this case, I just chopped out all these highs, and it's like, it sounds a bit weird. It sounds like they're filtered with nothing else. But if you add in even just the chords, like you never know. And that's also like very song specific, is what elements you need. Right. So I think probably for a while I had more high frequencies in the bass, and then at a certain point I'm like, you know what, it's just taking up space. And so I just chopped that out, let more of the frequencies of the chords and synths and everything come through. Yeah.
So this is essentially the drop without the drums and the energy, right? Is where you first get to hear the lead. Then we get to the build up, right? Where we actually start building toward that drop.
Yes, the build up, honestly, a lot of the same elements, right? So we have the giant breakdown, hands up in the air, you hear the melody, and then it's, now that we've teased the melody, now it's just like the next section to kind of bring the energy down again and then build up the tension even more until the full drop. So here I cut out some of the elements. You can see also I have a lot of automation. Like with these ones, I have this cutoff. So it's like the same pianos and everything, but just with taking out all the high frequencies.
Right.
Up here, I think I don't know if the frequencies are cut or if it's just the volume. Yeah, so like in this, no, the high frequencies stay, but you can see like I automate the volume, and so as like you still hear the piano, but it's getting softer, and so it's building up that tension, letting like the effects take up more of that space.
Right.
The leads are staying as well, but they also have this filter. Sometimes I'll do like like an endless smile or something to like really wash them out. In this case, I just filtered them and it worked. For effects, this is where effects start coming in. Like a lot of drum elements. Honestly, my snares and stuff are pretty simple. I just have like a... I think it's just a 909 snare, but I added some like reverb or something to it. If I can find it. There we go. Yeah, just some reverb.
Yep.
And then a little bit of a rhythmic thing. And then this was kind of funny. I think this is actually like a fill that Kygo uses a lot. If I play it for you, you'll probably recognize it. It's in a very different tempo than he normally uses, but it just felt like very cinematic. And I liked having this remix feel a bit more organic. So I just chopped this up and put it in.
Nice.
And so you add that with these ones. Yeah. And then it like starts bum 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 bum, you know, it adds like that offbeat rhythm that matches the leads and stuff. So that's kind of cool. And then yeah, I think that's most of it for drums. Then we have impacts and all the, here I can actually just mute the instruments, and then you can hear this is going into the build-up. So we have impacts, downlifters, some like claps that are slowly building up.
Right. Downlifter, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's different with every progressive house. You know, I mean, it's all more or less the same. You have a certain amount of time to do the snares and stuff, but like depending on the rhythm or whatever, maybe you could hear in there. I have like halfway through the build, I often like to do a cymbal transition or something. So you could do that, but I just added a little.
Again, helping the flow, right?
Yeah. So yeah, nothing complicated. I just have a lot of samples that a lot of these I've made myself. Like a while ago, I was obsessed with making downlifters, so just like a sign
cool.
down, but then you like automate the panning and whatever.
Yeah.
And I just save those samples. This was like back when I did Future House. I made a bunch of those samples. Some old like Vengeance samples. I think I made this riser, but very obviously inspired by Avicii. Just like a little square plucky thing with like some downsampling on it, just to give it a little character.
Right. So I guess there's a couple of things happening, right? Like all the elements are like, they're pretty much filtered at the beginning of the build-up, slowly opening up, right? Some of them getting quieter. Obviously the drums are introduced and all the effects like help you build toward that big moment, the drop, right? Are there any other tips you have to, help build to the chorus, to make the chorus or the drop hit harder, to make it more impactful?
I think you might hear slightly different like information or whatever from different producers. I'm very particular about like, to me, the drop hits hardest when it's in just the exact right amount of contrast to the build. Like, for instance, if you listen to, I don't know, there's some producers like Vloir does this in his tracks, where the drop is so much louder than the build-ups.
Right.
It sounds cool, but it's almost like there's a certain sweet spot. Like, if you imagine, you'd think that the most powerful drop is if it's like super loud. But it's like there's this certain sweet spot where if it's not loud enough, not in enough contrast with the build and the break, then it doesn't hit as hard as it can. And if it stands out too much, then it also doesn't hit as hard. So there's this very fine point. Otherwise,
delicate.
I mean, if it was all about contrast, then you'd just you'd go like this with the master volume, and then. And then so it's like to me it's all about having everything just as much as like enough contrast but not overkill.
Right.
So like down here I have a couple different things. I would say that these all add up to make maybe like the last 5, maybe 10%, probably like last 5%. But I'm cutting out some low frequencies, so I have on my instruments bus I have this. It's getting automated. I think it's this one. Yeah, you can see. So it's like cutting out all the bass.
Yeah.
Especially when you're in like a big festival, you really feel that. It's like all the
it's like sucking up
the stuff
the
you feel
bass,
in your body. It's
yeah.
just like it kind of goes away. You don't think about it.
Yeah.
But then when it comes back in, then you really feel it.
Yeah.
Underneath that, I have a little bit of stereo enhancer. I just have that on my master, and that's just narrowing up. So. Like the sound kind of gets narrower, and then when the drop hits it, probably don't hear that as much on speakers, but like on headphones, that makes the drop feel a lot bigger, wider.
Right.
I have a little bit of Endless Smile, so that's just adding like a little bit of reverb, kind of washing things out.
Right.
I usually do this on the drops, where I'll, like in the build-up, I'll take away maybe like a couple dB of volume. Not very much. You can see it's pretty subtle.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's all about what sounds right. There's actually been a couple tracks where I'll mix it badly, and so the drop is like where I actually have to build the volume. Like the drop is too loud.
Yeah. And
so I'll have to like build the volume in the breaks and then actually take it down in the drops. But normally if everything is right, if all the volumes are right, you can actually see I did the same thing here. I think this is before the breakdown. just to add a little bit more contrast. I almost treated that as a drop, so I actually took the volume down before the breakdown, like right here. Because that's such a moment of like impact.
Yeah.
When I listened to it originally, I was like, it kind of hits, but it could hit a little bit harder. So again, you can see I just subtly, but I took out some of the lows, narrowed it, took out some of the volume. So when that breakdown hits, it just has a bit more impact.
It's a cool thing about tricks like these, right? You don't only apply them right before the chorus, but you can also apply them in your verse or wherever, right? To just make a certain, like the next part more impactful, for example.
Yes, and this is something that I think is, like, as you spend more time producing, you just start doing things and not thinking about them. I remember when I first started producing, it's all about like rules, like what does Martin Garrix do when he does this? What does Afrojack do when he does this? And you like compartmentalize everything into like, this is a rule and it needs to be a certain way. And then once you've trained your ears for enough time and you're good at making decisions, you have enough confidence, then it becomes more about not what would someone else do or what's the rule for this, but it's just like, what would make this sound better?
Yeah.
And that's it. It's like, okay, it doesn't have enough impact. Great, let's take out some, let's add some more contrast. Now it has more impact. Like, you just do what the song needs rather than like trying to make it fit into a rule book.
Right.
So that's the build-up. And then we have the drop, which we've kind of gone over a lot of the elements like in the breakdown already. The main difference here is obviously we have drums.
Yep.
And we have sidechain. So even if I mute the drums, you can hear. Right, it's like the exact same thing here. But now it's
Bouncing,
really pumping.
Right? Yeah.
And I think this is a good place to start because this has a big effect on how much the drop hits. Obviously having sidechain, allowing the kick to really punch through.
Mm-hmm.
But in progressive house especially, at least the way I produce it, a lot of the elements have very different sidechains.
Right.
Like when I used to make Future House, almost all the elements had the same sidechain. But in progressive house, like I usually start from top frequencies to low. The high frequency, the leads will have very little sidechain, so they really shine through.
Yep.
You can really hear the melody. And then you'll have these longer kicks and the bass like really ducks down and gives it like that big pumping feeling.
Right.
Depending on the record, like you'll hear different records have different styles, so a lot of that is preference. But if I show you these here, for instance. So like on my leads, this is my lead bus that everything's going to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just have a couple like a filter automation here and stuff.
Yeah.
But the sidechain, I usually will do this sidechain, have it a little bit more, but in this case I just didn't want as much.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, usually about like 55%.
Yeah, not a lot.
Between like 50 and 60%, not much.
That's what I noticed. Like, whenever I tried making progressive years ago, I would, by default, put it to like 100 or 90% mix.
Yeah.
And it's ducking too much,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it totally destroys the energy. Like,
Yeah, there's a certain...
at least for like a lead or something like.
Yeah, with this type of style, it really... having these big like airy leads, if you chop into it too much, it kind of takes away the magic.
Yeah.
So I like putting... Again, it's like, it all varies a little bit depending on your sound, and there's some progressive tracks that'll have more, but generally I have like one of these side chains and yeah, about 55-60%.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a little bit more than that.
What about the bass? Like, is that any different from the
Yes, absolutely. So for the chords, just working down the elements, I usually have a bit longer on the chords.
Yep.
I usually do this one and somewhere between like 65-75%. So it's a bit more than the leads.
lead? Mm-hmm.
And then for the basses, that's when things like really duck out of the way. If I can find where I put my basses. I will sidechain also my mid basses. Like you can see, this has the same sidechain as the chords.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, so 73%. This is probably a little bit less sidechaining than I do on some records, but I just liked how I didn't want too much pumping kind of feeling on this record. So those are the mid basses, and then on the sub bass, then you can see this has a lot more side chaining. So this is the sub bass is at 100%. I think, I don't know if I have these linked up already, but if I play the kick, and the sub bass, let's see, is that going to... Yeah, so I'll just link this up really quick. One thing that's really cool with Kickstart 2 is, and I think other sidechain plugins as well, but it allows you to like actually route in your kick.
Right.
And so you can, for some reason my kick's like really tiny in here, but you can see my kick goes till about here, which is kind of where the volume comes up.
Yeah.
So there's like, I don't know, you'll hear different things for mixing, but generally you want your sub bass to be ducking out of the way almost entirely while your kick's going.
Yeah.
And so this is a nice tool where you can just like drag this around until you don't want it, you know, if I drag it over here, that just sounds really weird. And if I have it,
yeah,
and it's like overlapping a lot, you know, so you just drag it around until it's like mostly out of the way. Another important part of that too is also having the right kick, and I don't know, maybe we talk about that a little bit later, but like selecting the right samples as well, because like some of the old like Vengeance kicks and stuff almost take up the entire like length of the bar.
They would require a massive amount of sidechain to make sure they're not clashing. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's generally how it goes. Like very little sidechain on the lead elements and all the high frequency elements, and you can even hear this in different records. Like I don't know, some of the new Martin Garrix progressive records. I forget if it was Gravity or something else, but the bass line's like womp 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 womp. There was even a record that I produced recently where it was like almost the entire first half of the bar was just the kick, and then the side chain was super steep, so like the sub bass was like basically completely off for the first half and then all the way on. So it was like,
wow.
If you soloed it was like sounded really weird on its own, but once you put the kick there, and then that allows you to turn the kick way up, so then the kick's like super punchy and super loud and in your face.
I think it's a super valuable takeaway though, like side chaining different elements differently to your kick, because that's something I experienced as well when I was younger and trying to make progressive house. Is I would just put like one sidechain on everything, you know.
Yeah.
And obviously it sidechains everything very uniformly and very sounds very cohesive.
Yeah.
But you're not getting that energy and you're not getting that character, I guess, right? Whereas here you do get the energy and you do get like optimum character per element, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was one thing too, because coming from the other genres I came from, I just thought that you had to do, if you were going to sidechain your bass one way, you had to sidechain your leads one way.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to like understand that it's like, no, everything like that can work, but also depending on the genre, it doesn't always have to be that way.
Right.
And especially for progressive, it's almost never that way.
Right.
Like usually each element has a different version.
Right. So in terms of like energy, we talked about obviously the build up, the pre-chorus plays a huge part in determining the energy of the drop, the chorus, right? There's sidechaining playing a huge role. Mm-hmm. What's the role of effects in like a progressive house drop like this one?
Well, I can show you. For instance, if I take away some of these things.
Quite a few effect samples.
Yeah, so even just for now, like basically I'll play all the instruments and we've taken out all the fills. So it's just going to be like the kick, some white noise downlifters, and the instruments, and it's going to sound like this. It doesn't sound terrible because like the sound selection is already there, but it's just super empty. And so, I mean, if I solo all the drums without the instruments, you'll hear just how many little tiny effects and little fills and things are in there. So there's like a lot going on at once.
Yeah.
Usually, like this isn't as much in other genres, but of course you have a kick. In this case, I think I have like a little bit of a hi-hat type of top kicky thing. It's like super subtle, you probably can't even hear it, but I just had like a little thing on top just to give it a different characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
I'll always have rides, so it's like a constant like tss, tss, throughout the whole drop. Some drop claps to even just fill out the high end more. More drop claps. More drop claps. Which, if you just hear it like that, they sound a bit like it sounds like it would probably be too loud, but they work. And then you just start adding fills. So I have like some of these are little bounced fills from other projects and stuff. Offbeat claps. Normally I don't do offbeat claps in progressive. Normally it's just 4 on the floor.
Yeah. By offbeat you mean like on the 2 and the 4.
Yeah.
Like.
Yeah. So normally it's not. Normally it's just like.
Yeah.
But these are like super low in the mix, so you don't even really hear them. But there's just a lot of. Yeah, a lot of effects that are kind of on every like last beat of the bar, if that makes sense. Yeah, in terms of effects, like everything should be supporting the main theme of the track.
Yeah.
So like in this case, if we have the rhythm of bum 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 ba da bum 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 bum, you don't want your rhythm of the effects to be bum bum ba da bum 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 bum. And like whatever the lead's doing, whatever the main element's doing, you want your effects to be like you have the rhythm of the kick going bum 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 on every beat, and then the rhythm of the leads, and so you want the effects to be supporting the lead elements, and like the you just want the whole track to be cohesive.
Right.
So you don't. Like you want effects to be there, but only on the spots where it's adding to the rhythm instead of confusing your ears, if that makes sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and a lot of these little effects and stuff are just from sample packs. They're not like too unique or anything, but I think layering them with different ones and like I showed chopping them up, for instance, or even like little tiny details like this. Like this one, I could have just left as a whole sample, but I basically did this manual side chaining. So like it hits on this beat, and then I basically just ducked it with like a volume automation.
Yeah.
Super subtle. I could have done the same thing. Like if I went to my mixer rack and put it on a channel, I could have automated a side chain.
Yeah.
And again, it's all like doing this volume automation. I probably had this effect sitting in there for like 1 or 2 versions of the song, and then I heard it. I was like, I could make that 2% better if I added a little side chain, because it's like I already have a crash on that beat or whatever. So it's really just thinking about like what elements do you have there, and then is that clashing with elements that you don't want it to be.
Right.
And then making decisions based off of that. In the second half, then it looks like a lot, but essentially it's just more or less just like hi-hat loops. I have offbeat clap coming in. And then...
Sounds familiar.
Yes. And then, yeah, a lot of samples that just all add up to basically give the offbeat hi-hat rhythm.
Right.
It's a little complicated. Like I just started with a hi-hat, added a little shaker to support it, loop, more like white noise.
Oh, that's cool. Can you solo that element? Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's quite a bit.
Yeah. And then with this one, I use this sample for like every track. But it's like this really cool hi-hat loop, and then I just chopped it up to pretty much fit the rhythm of the lead a bit more.
Very cool. Oliver, sample pack.
Yeah, and it's like if I go like this, you can hear it's already a cool loop, but it's just very on beat. So like,
yep.
Now it's dun 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 dun.
Just like you said before, right? Now it's supporting the rhythm of the lead. Yeah.
And it's almost like with how we showed the lead before, where there's the white noise on it.
Yeah.
It's almost like that. Now you have this very rhythmic thing, but it's also following the lead, and so it's super subtle, but you just get that little extra boost of like back at the back at the back at the back. Just you know, it's subtle.
Very cool.
And then also same thing with this. It's pretty much doing the same thing as that white noise. It's just a different sound. And then I think to add a little more rhythm, I also just put a bit of delay on here. Yeah, so like if I turn off the effects. And then we're treating it almost like a lead layer.
Right.
So just boosting a little bit of the highs, adding some delay. And then I put a little bit of side changes to make it really groove.
Yeah, again, it's that delay bounce trick, I guess. The one you apply to the guitar, right? To add that little 16th note rhythm that just makes it that much more groovy and rhythmic. Yeah,
and it's stuff that you don't hear as much, you don't think about as much, but you feel.
Right.
Like it's especially obvious on something like this. Right, so like this Avicii piano. The main rhythm's there, but it's lacking something. Yeah, so having reverb and delay just fills it out. It's all about, again, like the main theme and then what elements can add to that.
Right.
And delay is just adding essentially like a rhythmic element to that main theme.
Right. So one thing I'm curious about is, you know, we're talking about effects. Can we hear like the final bar of the pre-chorus and then the chorus, but then the chorus without any of the like downlifters and crashes and impacts or whatever is like at the beginning of the chorus, just to feel the like energy.
The drop, that's the drop with no effects.
Drop, chorus.
See. I'll play from the build-up. Yeah, it's funny because once you have a song that has all the right sounds, even with less elements, it's still, you can hear it sounds pretty good. But obviously it's way different than the full song.
Yeah.
Like it's just lacking so much. So of course if we have like all the elements again. Especially in the second half of the drop, once you have all the hi-hats, that's where it really makes a difference.
Love that transition back into the Birds of a Feather lead there.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the second half of the drop, I'm hearing this arpeggio being introduced, which sounds amazing as well.
I think this is almost... It might be exactly the arpeggio that I use in the break or something similar. No, it's a little bit different. Yeah, so this is just one kind of inspired by the one I did in the break that like follows the idea of the one, like the main melody. But yeah, this is one that just like fills up space. Again, it has a lot of delay. Right? Very different without delay. Yeah. And that is one that I ended up using both in the second half of the drop, and then it also is like in the extended mix is kind of what starts out the whole song. Very filtered down.
Yeah.
So it's just, again, I kind of, I mean, if you listen to a lot of old Avicii tracks and stuff, like, he uses arpeggios all the time.
Yeah.
And that was one thing I kind of forgot about for a while, is doing arpeggios, but it's just like a little element that it adds a lot. You know, if this were actually Avicii, he'd probably do something like this. And, you know, maybe...
Yeah.
You know, something more like that.
Yeah.
I think I actually tried that because I was like, oh, maybe I can make it like a little bit of throwback, but it sounded, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just kept it like that.
Yeah.
But that adds a lot, and then, yeah, so we have the hi-hats adding a lot of like the top end, we have that arpeggio, and then we also have this little riser I made, which adds a lot of energy too.
Very cool. Just out of curiosity, how do you make
a riser?
This riser sound, like this very specific, like laser.
Yeah.
Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah, it's funny. I've like all this stuff is stuff I studied and like kind of taught myself when I was doing the remakes. And I've thought about doing a YouTube video on it, and I never had enough time. But yeah, all these sounds are like super simple. It's again Saw. I wanted it to sound a bit more kind of gamey, like a old video game type of sound. So
right.
I added some voices of Square, but it's just that Saw, Square, and then has a little bit of cutoff, so it has that kind of right, and then I have a pitch envelope on here. So I mean, it's, yeah, if I just drag this like this, oh boy. I think I got it. Like if we just do an init preset. Right, so you could do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could also do something like this.
That works.
Even that's not bad. And so yeah, and you could do something more open like that as well. I mean, all I did is I just did a pitch A-B. So this is an envelope, and in Serum it's a bit different. It's a bit more visual, but in Sylenth you just have these ADSR controls, just like you have the control over the volume.
Right.
You have the same thing for whatever you want to assign this to. So this is just pitch. You just mess around.
Yeah, you can kind of go crazy here, right? But this is like super easy because when I was younger, I never knew how to make effects. I would just drag in samples. But seeing this,
Yeah.
it's, I think, very inspiring and encouraging to a lot of, especially aspiring producers who, might be like, well, it's actually just a couple of clicks and you have this very cool, tweakable effect.
Yeah, and that's also a thing, like, one thing that I would recommend if people want to learn sound design. Like, I'm not a genius. Like, if you want to go to a genius sound designer, like, find someone who makes dubstep or something like that. Right? Like, those sounds are way more complicated. Yeah. But for EDM and a lot of these sounds, like, a lot of the sounds aren't complicated. It's just knowing, I would say you maybe have to learn like 10 things. You have to learn about like cutoff filters, you have to learn about pitch, you have to learn about LFO. Like, there's a few things, and once you know all those things, then you can make like almost any sound.
Yeah.
And so one thing that's, I mean, like, I have remakes and stuff online, and you can find remakes from other people, you can find remakes from you. Where if you download those projects, then it's like, ooh, how do you make that riser? And then you can just, once you look at that a couple times, then it's pretty easy. But like, already we have that sound. Once you have the basis, you can try a square. This is also cool.
Yeah.
If you want to make it more like the version that I did, then I had a cutoff filter. All I'm doing is I'm like routing this to the cutoff. And play around with like the threshold and yeah. And again, every synth's different, so like this is gonna look very different in Serum.
Right.
But all the controls are the same.
Yeah.
Like, all we're doing is routing this to a filter, and then we're telling it to like open up the filter for a certain amount of time, and yeah, and then you route it and put reverb on it, whatever you want. So yeah, those type of sounds, like, and you can also find those in sample packs, but sometimes it's just like quicker to, if I want a certain sound, instead of looking through Splice for 10 minutes and being like, oh, that kind of works, that kind of works, that's the wrong key, and I'm gonna have to repitch it and whatever. It's just like, okay, I'm just gonna make it.
Yeah.
I can start it exactly on the note I want to make it. You see, I have a pitch automation. I end it exactly where I want to do it. And then once you have a sound that you're happy with too, like this is a sound I made a while ago. I liked it, so I just bounced it out. Now I have it in audio.
Yeah.
Right?
That's what you're saying, right? This, like, making effects or sounds like these can go a long way, right? Because obviously you create unique sounds that are your own, but also you can keep reusing them. It's efficient in the long run, but also you help to create your own signature sound, right? By using the same set of sounds. And obviously you'll renew sounds along the way and you'll use new sounds, but this is definitely a great way to build that signature sound.
Yeah, 100%. And it makes your productions way quicker. Like, here, it took me forever, but eventually I like actually spent some time going in Finder or File Explorer, whatever you use, and like organizing all my folders in there. Right. And then now I just have it located in FL Studio, so now it's like, okay, if I want to make progressive house, now I go and I have my progressive house kicks, and I've sampled stuff, and I've made my own kicks, and I come here and I have my effects, and like every little thing.
Yeah.
And it slowly builds over time, and I still use Splice all the time, but like having a foundation of samples work, especially if you've used them in a song that's already released, like go in, bounce the stems, save the samples. Takes a little bit of time, but it like saves you a lot of time later down the road.
Right. So yeah, this is like ending the first drop. So when you have that, you have like a verse, you have the build up, you have the drop. In terms of finishing the arrangement, is it a matter of kind of copying the same sections you had and tweaking and adding things here and there, or what's your process there to kind of get to this complete arrangement?
I don't know. I always have a process. A lot of the times I'll kind of, I'm very much like between intuition and using reference tracks.
Right.
One of the things we were talking about earlier off camera is that it's very important to use reference tracks for everything. This is something that Afrojack, this was like one of the first thing, and he keeps saying it over and over and over. Even after I've done that for a long time, I'll sometimes forget. But you can use a reference track for sound design. You can use a reference track for melody ideas. You can use a reference track for song structure. You can use a reference... Any element of a track, it's good to use a reference track for. So for instance, I was using one of my own tracks that I was on as a reference track for mixing.
Right.
I probably also used one of these. You can see I have another Martin Garrix track above that, as originally that was for sound design and like mixing. I might have also used that for arrangement. But generally I like to keep the second break a little bit different. One thing that's super easy is just giving a bit of extra rhythm. So either starting out with like a bass already to give it that low end.
Mm-hmm.
I have like a kick here.
Filler, right?
Yeah, so it's just like, because now you've gotten to the energy of the drop,
Yeah.
and now it feels a bit weird to go back to like super low energy.
Right.
So you want it chill, but you want it a little, like you want to keep the rhythm going. So now we have a kick. It's a very like cut off kick.
Yeah.
Right, so it's not in your face. It saves the energy for the drop with
Right.
the more punchy kick. I have this shaker. It's a weird shaker. Afrojack told me to switch it, but I liked it, so I kept it. He's like, take away that shaker with those stupid little percussion things.
Yeah.
But
It
I
sounds
liked
fun.
it. It's like unique.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's easy to be very repetitive with progressive house, so
Right.
I try to keep that unique. One thing I personally like to do, you can do this by adding a different synth or whatever, but I like adding acoustic elements,
Mm-hmm.
and I play guitar. So a lot of the tracks I've been making recently, and it just makes it unique because like not all producers play a real instrument as well.
Right.
So for instance, it's pretty low in the mix, but I just recorded this. It's like this nice little
Yeah.
thing.
Sounds great.
I think this is more guitar.
Muted, right?
Yeah. It's like a bit of a shitty recording, to be honest, but like in
Yeah,
the context of a mix, it just... You're like, okay, this feels more like a acoustic song.
Yeah, that's...
You don't even... It's so low in the
Yeah.
mix, you barely hear it.
But it adds character, and especially this, like, muted guitar rhythm, and it's like, it sounds so bold, right? So when you play it in
Yeah.
solo, it definitely adds that bold feel to this part.
Yeah, and
love
like
that.
if I took out this acoustic guitar,
Yeah.
you just hear these little slides,
Yeah.
these little tiny elements.
Super
and,
organic and natural. Really,
yeah.
really great.
And then you have the bird sounds and like Billie Eilish's voice, and it
Yeah.
just it kind of felt like it created a nice bed. Also, I don't think I had these in the first break. I have these little tiny synthy things. So like this just kind of gives it a bit more energy going into the second section.
Yeah.
Subtle but like nice ear candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from here it's just all a matter of building up, kind of having the energy stay low and then bringing it back up to the second breakdown and then the second drop, which you want even like, that's the maximum energy.
So what do you do there to make the energy the energy level even higher than the first drop?
Yeah, well, one thing for the second breakdown, and this is actually something that Afrojack suggested I do, is to leave like a bit of a gap. So instead of going right into the breakdown like it did the first time, just to switch it up a bit, we have like a bit of a gap there, and then
Okay.
I have like this weird sub drop. I just like played around and had fun with this transition, so it sounds like this.
That's so great for festivals, right?
Yeah, it's because, well, people are expecting, like, normally the transition would happen here and then it's back into the melody, and so they're
Right.
like, wait, shit, where's the melody?
Yeah.
And then it's like, waits a little bit, there's the melody.
Yeah.
So that's fun. And I think most of the elements are the same there. The thing that really gives, well, there's a few things, but I would say one of the most important parts of making the second drop feel like it has the most energy is switching up the build-up. So if you listen to, I don't know, even like old records like Don't You Worry Child or something,
Mm-hmm.
what you'll notice is like in the first build-up, some of the melodic elements stay there and you can hear them.
Right.
Usually in the second build-up, sometimes those melodic elements will go away almost completely. Yeah. And it's just drums,
bars,
it's just risers, it's
Yeah.
just effects.
Yeah.
And then it's just like at the end, it's just like a bunch of drums and like risers and stuff, and then the melody comes back.
Yeah.
And so, honestly, I wouldn't say I'm the best at that. I think I can still get better, but in a lot of the stuff I've been doing recently, like you can see, like now I have a volume automation for the chords, so now it's actually taking some of the volume away from the chords.
Mm.
This was one of the automations that was already in the first one. Up here, I have a respace that's in the build-up that also has a volume automation on it. So as I'm going in the second build-up, I'm like taking away volume from the melodic elements, which then gives me room to actually add more. Like now I can maybe add another riser. This is a completely different new riser that I didn't have in the first build. You know, on its own it sounds pretty intense, but
yeah.
It's like, okay, something's like really coming.
Yeah.
And then I ended up switching out. It's a similar riser that I had in the first section, but this is now a bit more of a dramatic riser. It has like a faster part.
I love it when risers transition
stay.
into like a new drop element.
Yeah.
You know, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, Avicii did that in so many of his songs, and keeping with the theme of like a modern sound, but also with some of the old Avicii elements. That felt like it was a cool thing to do.
Yeah.
And it also, going into the second drop, that was like another element that could add that level of energy.
Right.
Up here, I think this is maybe a second. No, I guess I have that. Yeah, so it's mainly like this riser that adds tension, having a slightly different riser like that like doubles the speed. So especially at the end, it's like, like double time. And then, adding those and then taking the volume away from some of the melodic elements to let those new ones come through, to let the effects like be louder. Sometimes as well, like I'll make the second build up double length. So in this case it's the same length, but if you listen to like a lot of big progressive records, here we have like 8 bars. Sometimes I'll do 16 bars.
Right.
A lot of times after
just
that
for the
tells me
second build up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised that we didn't do 16 bars here. But honestly, this song is very long anyway.
How long is it?
I think the extended mix is like almost 6 minutes or something.
Oh wow.
5.5 or...
That does remind one of the old EDM days where,
Yeah.
you know, original extended mixes were always 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all.
Yeah.
But... And then as far as coming into the second drop, one of the elements, we have this riser that now is like a sustained. So now it's these 16th notes that's going along. So that adds... It's subtle, but it definitely adds a whole another layer of energy. Just going like this.
Yeah, can we hear the riser in context of the like build up and chorus?
Yeah. Yeah, so we have that riser, and then also up here, one thing that's super simple to do is I just take some of the elements that like some of the hi-hats and stuff that normally start halfway through the drop, and I'll just bring them up to the front. So now, instead of it just being the kick, now the drop starts with some of those offbeat things. So we have like hi-hat and a couple shaker loops.
Right. For even more energy and groove, right?
And like I don't include all of them, because then here we still bring back some of those even faster ones, so it's not like all the energy at once, but it starts a bit more. It's letting you know, it's like, okay, this is the finale, fireworks, everything's happening all at once.
Right.
And yeah, you know, depending on some genres and whatever, like maybe you change the melody or you go even a bit crazier. But for progressive house, usually the drop's like mostly the same. You don't want to switch up the melody.
Right. Right.
It's like, don't you worry, child, and then the melody's different. You're like, what?
Yeah, like less is more, like keep it simple, right? It's, yeah. So, I guess a more philosophical question, right? Because song is done now. Like, when do you decide? When do you make the call that a song is finished? Like, when do you know?
It's a very good question, and a lot of times you don't. I mean, I think a lot of it just has to do with experience, especially getting really good at one genre. Because like I mean, okay, I'll give you an example. When I first started producing, for maybe the first year or two, like if I could get to 30 tracks, that was like a big project.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I hit 30 tracks, I was like, oh my god, like this is crazy.
Yeah.
And now you look at something like this, and it's like, you know, if I have 30 tracks, that's what? That's just like my drums.
Yeah.
You know, and so then you look down and down and down. And yeah, again, a lot of it's automation and stuff, but yeah, so I think a lot of it's experience of knowing what the sound is that you want. And then one thing that's helpful too, and not everybody has this, but if you have people to give you feedback.
Right.
So for me, for example, I had a version of this. I sent it to Afrojack. He sent it to Martin Garrix. I didn't think it was finished, but it was a good enough version that they could at least play live.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, that wasn't the final version, so we started working on it a little bit more. Got some feedback about, okay, let's fix the arrangement. I think at one point I had taken away the breakdown. And so you kind of play around with things. But then you have a version of it that you think is best, and then maybe you get a version of it that you have feedback from other people. Some of this too, like especially in dance music, will be feedback from playing it live. Like this is one of the things that I have an advantage of right now is, I mean, I'll play some shows live, but even just having a track like this and have Afrojack play it live, then he's able to tell me some specific things as a dance track of things that you'd only know if you play it live.
Right. Was there any feedback on this song specifically from that live experience coming from like Afrojack or Martin Garrix?
Yeah, well, a lot of it, I mean, it was funny. Martin was actually playing the very first demo version that he had got. He was playing that for months.
Wow.
And I had sent him an updated version. I was like, hey, here's like a better version. And he just kept playing the original demo. It wasn't too different. Like most of the elements were still there, but definitely a lot of the sound design and like, again, I had started out with a more kind of like chiller sound, and then at a certain point we took it like full on progressive, big festival. Yeah, but I think it's just knowing, once you have all the elements there, then it's just a matter of what do you want the song to sound like. A big part of that is bringing in reference tracks. Like I said, if I show you up here, I have like 7 different tracks up here, you know, and it's very easy to hear one of these tracks by themselves and think, ooh, that sounds good, I'll make it sound like that.
Right.
You make it sound like one track, you think it sounds good, and then you listen to a different reference track, and then you're like, shit, now it should sound more like this other track. So a lot of it is just making a decision of, you just pick a direction and go with it. You know, do I want this to sound more like High on Life? Do I want this to sound more like Don't You Worry Child? Do I want this to there's no right answer. And sometimes you do a mix of all of them. I don't think there's any definitive answer.
Yeah. I do love the whole reference tip because, a lot of people give that tip, right? Use a reference song for your mixes, which makes sense because, if you're not referencing anything, you're kind of mixing blind, right? Like your only reference point at that moment is what you're hearing. And even though that might sound good, I compare it to, hearing different sounds on splice, right? Like I said before, like if you have 2 kicks in a sample pack, one is like mediocre and one is like bad, the mediocre one will sound good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you need some kind of reference to determine that.
Yeah.
If there's no reference and you only hear the bad kick, you might even say that one sounds good at one point if you listen to it like too many times, I guess.
Exactly.
Same goes for a song, right? A reference song in terms of mix should be your guiding star, or at least, it's important to work toward that in terms of getting a mix right. But I especially love the point you made about using reference songs for other aspects like song structure, melody, and all those. Like, there's so much to learn from, especially the songs you like and the artists you admire, right? So why not, use the fact that they're out there to your advantage.
Yeah, of course. And one thing, I mean, it was easy for me to do because that's like how I used to do all my remakes.
Right.
That's the entire thing. You take a track and you try to reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So essentially referencing a track is kind of like that. You're not like copying it, but you're using elements of it. One thing that is incredibly easy now that makes it so much easier to either learn production or even just use as a mixing tool that didn't exist even like a couple years ago is like, let's say I wanted to get super detailed on my mix. At least in FL Studio, I can go like this. I can extract all the stems, and now I can have like a visual reference of, okay, what kick did they use? Like let's see, how long is their kick? Okay, so their kick goes halfway through the bar.
Right.
What about their bass? What about that? And then if you want to get even more detailed, like this is actually, once I get to the final stages of mixing, I'll just go half length so it's quicker. But what I'll do is I'll just bounce out the full mix of my track. So I'll just render this to an audio file. So now I have my track, which is just the drums. Let's see. Alright, now I have my full mix. So now I have just the drop. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing with this. So I'm going to use AI to extract the stems from a reference track and then my track. And now we'll have both. And this is just one tool out of like a lot that you can use for mixing. But now one thing that's really cool is I can, for instance, I can compare my drums. So okay, did I get my drums right? Yeah, our kicks are about the same size.
Yeah.
Their kicks are a little bit bigger, so maybe I can make my kicks a little bit louder, or maybe that's a mastering thing, or maybe that's just a loudness thing, like maybe their track's slightly louder.
Right.
What about our basses? Like, do I have way too much bass? It's like, oh, no, okay, our basses are like the same.
Yeah, because ideally before...
You can even look at the sidechain, like now you can see what type of sidechain they're using.
Right. Yeah, because ideally before comparing, you would kind of like level match the two, right? The reference to your song.
Yeah.
To kind of be able to make those inferences. But
yeah. A lot of this is this is like a very kind of last step. Like you can do this by ear, you can do this using other tools, but even if it's just like, especially with drums, this is super important because like a lot of people maybe you'll hear a sample that sounds kind of close, but you don't realize your sample's half the length it needs to be.
Right.
The top kick sounds good,
Yeah.
but you don't realize the body of the kick is way different.
Yeah.
And so then if you can actually see, like, this helps to learn if you're in a new genre, like what type of drums are they using, what type of kicks are they using.
Right.
With the bass, like, is it steady notes, or this is a good way, like if you don't know anything about progressive house, what type of sidechain do they use on their bass? It's like, okay, now I know how long their sidechain is.
Yeah. Super insightful.
Yeah. So this is a bit of a kind of sneaky way of doing things, but like if you're, when I started, this tool didn't exist, but now it's like a very good way to like listen to certain elements. Even what you can do is, if you want to have like a tool like this, a spectrum analyzer, and let's say we just listen to the chords. Like now you can look at what kind of frequency range are they doing.
Right.
And then we can listen to ours. Make sure there's not like anything weird that stands out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we could be liking mids or body, for example, and a tool like this could visually pinpoint that, right? And compared to a reference song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can, I mean, it's a combination. It's using your ears, it's using tools like this, but like having a reference track, and you need to make sure your reference track sounds good.
Right.
If you get like a badly produced reference track, then it's probably counterproductive.
Right. Right.
But reference tracks are very important. Sound design, song structure, everything.
Right. Finally, what's on your master channel?
Psh, I'm probably a bad person to answer this.
Well, I mean, even the era, whatever works.
Yeah. So I'm, like, one of the things I learned from being on this track, our time that we just did, is I knew I wasn't like a super good mastering engineer. Like, there's people that do this full time. But you know, I thought I was pretty good, and then I heard with that song, like after it went through mastering, I was like, okay, you can definitely hear a difference. But without me being a pro mastering guy, usually all I have on my master chain is a little bit of compression. I wouldn't really try to follow what I do because I'm probably doing it wrong. But I just have this little free compression thing. I think I actually have the glue, which a lot of people use.
Yeah.
So sometimes I use that. But just a little bit of compression. I have Maximus, which I used to use this as like a one plugin that did everything on my mastering chain. The only thing I'm using this for now is stereo imaging. So like all the compression I have disabled. And the only thing that this is doing is you can just see this knob. For the lows, I'm not doing anything. For the mids, I'm widening the stereo field a little bit. For the highs, a little bit less.
Mm-hmm.
So that just makes it sound like slightly wider. This is a plugin I'm narrowing. This is the one I use to narrow the automation.
Right, the automation. Yeah.
So that doesn't have any like effect on the actual sound. And then just a limiter. So this is just making it loud. I mean, if I play the song with and without the master chain, like, it's just gonna be a bit louder. One thing, and take this with a little bit of grain of salt, because every time Afrojack sees this, for instance, he wags his finger at me and tells me not to do it. But in my opinion, like, at the end of the day, all you have in music is volume and frequency.
Yeah.
Those are the only two things. Like, every single plugin that you're ever going to use, if you're saturating, you're just adding certain harmonic frequencies. You're just turning up the volume of specific frequencies. If you're compressing, you're, like, everything that you can do in music is just frequency and volume. Those are the only two things you have.
Right.
So even though maybe there's like technically better ways of doing it, a lot of me shaping the sound that I want is if I have a mix that already sounds pretty good and then I bring in a reference track, sometimes I'm going to even just do a little bit of corrective EQ, for instance, either on just my instruments, or maybe I'll just do it on my lead bus, just tiny little corrections, or sometimes I'll even do it like what I did with this is I was referencing our time, and then just based on what I'm hearing, I'm just tweaking little frequencies and saying, okay, it has a little bit more low end, maybe I take a little bit of stuff away in the mids, and yeah, that just kind of like shapes the overall character. It's probably going to be pretty subtle, but if I play it without, just adding like a little bit of high end. It's a bit hard because we have these lights that are kind of blocking some of the frequencies.
The speakers, yeah.
But
you can
like,
tell.
Yeah, and especially if you put headphones on, you're listening really close. Like a lot of that last 5% of just making it really pop, to me, is just about tonal balance. And so if you have a reference track you really like, and they even have plugins like I think you can even do it in this. There's like you can...
the EQ match.
Yeah, the EQ match. I stopped using that because it like, I don't know, it can get a bit funky, and now I just do it by ear. But there are tools where you can like actually get a curve of like a specific song, and then kind of match that EQ to like, and sometimes it works. It can work. Sometimes you can also mess yourself up if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like a little bit of corrective EQ and limiting to make it loud, and as long as you have a good reference track, then you're not too far off.
Right. Yeah, one question I'm getting a lot is, should I use headphones or should I invest in speakers, monitors to make music? There's no right or wrong answer, but just curious, like how much % of the time do you use speakers versus headphones?
I honestly prefer mixing in headphones.
Right.
If you have a studio like this, where you have big speakers where you can actually hear the really low end, the really sub frequencies, then that has its advantages, because obviously you can hear if your bass is way too loud or something. Usually you can do like 90% of your mixing if you just have headphones and a plugin like this. Because there's visual tools, like if you use this, it's not exact. Sometimes it can be a little bit misleading, but this really helps get like a general balance. And so you can see if your bass is like way too loud. So I can get like a 90% mix just on headphones. And then sometimes I'll listen to it in a car or a big studio just to make sure if my sub frequencies are like a little bit more accurate. But for stuff like stereo imaging, for like little tiny details, most of the stuff in a mix, aside from the like low end, I like headphones better. I feel like a lot of people are gonna disagree with that, but
like I said, there's no right or wrong answer.
You hear more details, especially also samples. Like if you have a very, like if I'm trying to find a kick that sounds exactly like a reference track, and I'm trying to like tweak a sound or something, you can just hear those little subtle details better in headphones.
Yeah. Finally, what would be the one piece of advice you would give to a producer, at no matter what point in their journey they are?
This kind of came from a question someone on Instagram that I was talking to recently, is like how to process sounds to make better, like how to process certain sounds to make them sound better, especially with samples and stuff. And we were looking at this too with like my earlier remakes. You can be really good at making sounds on a synth or something, but if you have shitty samples, especially because dance music is so centered around the kick.
Right. If
you have shitty samples, especially kick samples, but any samples, clap samples, whatever, that can like make or break a track. And I've had tracks. I had one track actually that I released last year finally that sat around for a year and a half, and it never sounded the way I wanted to. and I kept tweaking synths, and I kept doing whatever. All it needed was a better kick sample. And once I knew what a good kick sample sounded like, and I had made a little folder of like kicks that I knew worked, I tried one of those, and like instantly I was like, oh, this sounds good. And I sent it back to the guy I was collabing with. He was like, what did you do? You like changed the whole mix. I was like, no, I just changed one sample. So finding good samples is huge. Using references is huge if you don't already. Like, that's a game changer for everything, for mixes, for arrangement. You can't hit a target that you don't know what the target is.
Right. Very good.
So make sure you have a target that you're aiming for. Speaking of mixing and mastering, I would say mastering is overrated. Like I said, if you have someone who really knows what they're doing with mastering, it can make a difference, but like 95% of making a track sound good is down to mixing and tonal balance and choosing the right sounds, and like mastering is just a bonus.
Right.
But most of mastering is just a little extra sparkle, mostly loudness, but most of it is mixing. And I don't know, I think my biggest advice is just strap in and prepare for doing this for a long time. Like I said, I got pretty lucky with going down the path and all the steps that I've taken, but it's taken 7 years. And that was, if you had told me when I started it was going to take 7 years, I'd be like, dude, you're full of shit. I'm going to do it in 2 years.
Right.
And that was so unrealistic. And I'm still, I still have such a long way to go. Maybe I have a little bit of success now, but it might take another 5 years to, actually build things up. So you never know.
Yeah.
But you just keep learning, keep trying to get better. Even when you think you're good, keep trying to get better after that.
Yeah, always keep improving. That's a great message and great way to end this. Thank you so much for having us and for walking us through this amazing progressive house remix, sounding really great. Yeah, be sure to follow Amél on all his socials to, stay updated on all the songs he releases and, the small tips and everything he puts out, which are super, super helpful. Also be sure to follow us on all our socials, on Instagram, on YouTube, to stay updated on every tutorial and new video we put out. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.